My hands wouldn't stop trembling. The envelope was already torn open, the paper inside crumpled from how tightly I was gripping it. I could see the words, clear as day. Probability of paternity, 0%. For a moment, it was like the whole world fell silent. My ears rang, my chest felt like a vice had locked shut around it, and every breath came out shallow and ragged. My fingers went numb, but I couldn't let go of that paper. It was the proof. Proof that the child my wife carried wasn't mine. Behind me, I heard the faintest sound. Her voice, light and sweet, humming to herself in the kitchen. She was smiling, moving around like nothing in the world was wrong. And the contrast hit me like a freight train. She was living her life calm, collected, and so perfectly casual. While I stood frozen, shattered, staring at evidence of a betrayal so deep, it hollowed me out. My mind screamed questions I couldn't answer. How long had she been lying to me? Who was the real father? How could she look me in the eyes every day knowing the truth? My pulse pounded so loud it drowned out her voice. And here's the thing. I trusted her. I gave her my loyalty, my love, my future. I built my world around her. And she handed me back a lie dressed as a family. So let me ask you, what would you do if the person you trusted most, the person you vowed to share your life with, gave you the ultimate betrayal? Would you collapse under the weight of it? Or would you rise from it, stronger, sharper, ready to give betrayal the payback it deserves? Because this isn't just a story about heartbreak. It's not just about a man crushed under the weight of deceit. No, this story is about justice, about how lies eventually catch fire, and how the truth burns brighter than any secret. And when you hear how it all unfolded, how betrayal turned into revenge, how heartbreak became closure, you'll know one thing for certain. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock on the door. Sometimes it kicks it down. If you've ever been lied to, disrespected, or betrayed, you already know that hollow, burning feeling in your chest. That ache that keeps you awake at night, replaying every word, every glance, every moment, that suddenly doesn't feel real anymore. And if you've felt that, this story is going to hit you right in the gut. Because what I'm about to share isn't just a tale of heartbreak. It's about deception so cold it makes your skin crawl. It's about standing in the ashes of your trust and deciding whether you'll stay broken or rebuild stronger. Stick with me, because the ending? Let's just say karma came harder than she ever imagined, and when it hit like a wrecking ball. The kind of justice that makes you lean back, smile, and think, finally, that's what she deserved. But before we dive in, I want you to do something for yourself. If you believe that betrayal deserves payback, that truth should never be buried under lies, then go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe, so you don't miss stories where justice actually gets served. Now, take a deep breath, settle in, and let's step together into this roller coaster of lies, betrayal, and the kind of revenge that will stay with you long after the story ends. When I first met her, I thought I had found the woman I was destined to spend the rest of my life with. She had that kind of smile that could pull the air out of a room and leave you gasping. And when she looked at me, it felt like the world stopped spinning just for a moment. We were young, reckless, and stupidly in love. The kind of love that makes you forget the rest of the world even exists. Back then, everything was easy. We stayed up until sunrise talking about dreams and promises. We'd take long drives with no destination, just because being in each other's company was enough. I remember thinking, this is it. This is what forever feels like. But forever has a way of wearing thin. Slowly, almost invisibly, the warmth we had began to cool. It wasn't like one day she just stopped loving me. It was more like little pieces of her affection fell away, like paint peeling off an old wall. At first, I told myself it was stress. She was busy, we were building our life, bills piled up, work schedules stretched us thin. Those things eat at any marriage, right? But deep down, I knew what I was seeing weren't just cracks. They were fractures. I'd come home late from work, exhausted but eager to see her, and she'd already be in bed, phone in her hand, screen lighting up her face. When I tried to talk, to tell her about my day, she'd nod absently, eyes fixed on that glowing screen. I told myself, it's nothing. Just social media, just friends. But in my gut, I knew. There's a difference between distraction and disconnection. She wasn't just distracted, she was slipping further and further away. The nights grew longer. She stayed out with friends more often, brushing off my questions with casual dismissals. "Don't be paranoid," she'd say, rolling her eyes, like my concern was some kind of weakness. And I, like a fool, swallowed it. I convinced myself she was right, that maybe I was insecure, maybe I was too sensitive. I wanted to believe in her so badly that I silenced the voice screaming in the back of my mind. "She loves you. She's just tired." Don't ruin things by doubting her. But love shouldn't feel like begging for scraps of attention. Love shouldn't make you feel invisible in your own home. What hurt the most wasn't the late nights or the phone she guarded like a state secret. It was the distance in her eyes when she looked at me. Once those eyes held warmth, admiration, even desire. Now, when she looked my way, it was like she was glancing through me, as if I'd become a piece of furniture she'd grown used to ignoring. I told myself every excuse in the book. It's just a rough patch. Couples go through this. She still cares, she has to. But the more I tried to hold on, the faster she slipped away, until the love I thought we had began to feel like a ghost haunting me in my own house. And here's the part that still gnaws at me. I wasn't blind. I saw the signs. I felt the cracks widening every day. But I chose to ignore them, because sometimes the truth is too painful to face. Because admitting it would mean accepting that the woman I had given everything to might not have been mine at all anymore. Looking back, I realize I wasn't holding on to her. I was holding on to the memory of who I thought she was. And memories. Can't love you back. I'll never forget the night she told me she was pregnant. She stood in the doorway of our bedroom, hands clasped together like she was holding something delicate, her eyes shining as she whispered, "We're having a baby." For a second, time froze. My chest swelled with something I hadn't felt in months, pure joy. All those nights of distance, all the cold silences, they melted away in that single moment. I pulled her close, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "We're going to be parents." In that instant, I felt like maybe fate had handed us a fresh start, but the glow of that moment didn't last long. At first, I chalked it up to hormones, stress, or nerves, but the distance between us only deepened. She became more guarded, retreating behind walls I couldn't break through. Intimacy vanished completely. Anytime I tried to hold her close, she'd shrug me off gently, murmuring, "I just need some space." It's the pregnancy. And then there was the word she kept using, privacy. Suddenly, her phone, her laptop, even her conversations with friends became off-limits. "I deserve privacy," she'd snap whenever I asked an innocent question. Privacy? We were married. We were supposed to be building a family together. Why did I feel like I was being pushed further and further out of the picture? People around us were ecstatic. Her parents cried tears of joy. Our friends sent congratulations, and I smiled through it all, pretending my heart wasn't sinking. Everyone seemed convinced we were stepping into the happiest chapter of our lives. But I couldn't shake the nagging thoughts clawing at me. The timeline didn't add up. She had been too tired and not in the mood for months. When exactly had this miracle happened? Every time I tried to piece the puzzle together, my stomach knotted tighter. Still, I told myself I was overthinking. I had to be. I wanted to believe this baby was ours, that it was proof we still had something worth saving. But little cracks kept showing, and each one cut a little deeper. When I brought up baby names, her response was sharp, almost irritated. "Don't get ahead of yourself. We've got plenty of time." When I suggested we start looking at nurseries, she brushed it off with a cold laugh. "You don't know the first thing about babies. Let me handle it." Her words stung. It wasn't just that she dismissed me. It was the way she said it, like I was some clueless bystander in my own family's story. I noticed the small humiliations piling up, too. At family dinners, she'd roll her eyes when I asked questions about her doctor visits, answering like I was slow to understand. Around friends, she'd joke about me being overly eager or too emotional, and everyone would laugh while I forced a smile. But inside, I was dying a little more each day, because deep down something wasn't right. I couldn't point to one thing, but the feeling grew heavier, like a weight pressing on my chest. At night, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling. listening to her breathe beside me, and the thought would creep in, what if this baby isn't mine? I hated myself for even thinking it. I told myself it was paranoia, that I was sabotaging my own happiness. But once a seed like that takes root in your mind, it doesn't stop growing. And soon enough, the cracks in our marriage weren't just cracks anymore. They were canyons pulling us further apart. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pushed toward the edge of a cliff I didn't even know existed. It happened on an ordinary night, one of those evenings where nothing feels particularly memorable until the universe decides to drop a hammer on your chest. I had come home from work a little earlier than usual. The house was quiet, too quiet. I set my bag down, loosened my tie, and as I walked down the hallway, I heard her voice. She was in the bedroom, the door half closed. Her tone wasn't casual, wasn't the tired, distracted voice she usually reserved for me. No, this voice was softer, intimate. It stopped me cold. "Don't worry, I'll handle it," she whispered, her words punctuated with a nervous laugh. A silence followed, then she giggled, an honest-to-God giggle I hadn't heard from her in months. I froze in the hallway, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst through my rib cage. The way she spoke. It wasn't how a wife talks to a friend. It was how a woman talks to someone who makes her feel alive. I didn't barge in. Instead, I backed away, silent as a shadow. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my phone, desperate to ground myself. But no amount of deep breathing could drown out what I had just heard. Later that night, when she was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I picked up her phone. My stomach twisted with guilt, but my need for the truth outweighed everything else. The messages weren't explicit, no glaring admissions, no photographs, but they didn't need to be. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you. Wish you were here instead of him." Short sentences that cut deeper than any knife. Stared at the screen until the letters blurred through my tears. My wife, the woman I had trusted with everything, was living a double life. When she walked out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her, she saw me holding the phone. Her eyes narrowed instantly. "What are you doing?" she snapped. I looked up, my throat dry, and managed to whisper, "Who is he?" She didn't flinch. She didn't apologize or even look guilty. Instead, she rolled her eyes and let out a cold, dismissive laugh. "Seriously? You're snooping through my phone now? God, you sound pathetic." Her words hit harder than the messages themselves. Pathetic. Like my pain was a joke. "I heard you," I said, my voice trembling. "I heard you on the phone. Just tell me the truth." But she didn't budge. She crossed her arms, tilted her head, and painted me as the villain. "You're imagining things. You've always been insecure, and now you're making up stories because you can't handle the fact that I want privacy. Gaslighting, twisting my reality into something ugly and weak." For a moment, I almost believed her, almost convinced myself I was overreacting, but then I remembered the texts, the giggle, the way her voice softened for someone else. No, this wasn't paranoia. This wasn't insecurity. That night, as I lay in bed with her asleep beside me, the decision crystallized in my mind. My chest ached, my fists clenched beneath the blanket, but my thoughts were sharp as glass. I needed proof, real proof. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. And if she thought she could keep spinning lies until I broke, she had no idea who she was dealing with. That was the moment everything changed. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was a man on a mission. The days that followed were the longest of my life. I lived in a haze, moving through routines like a ghost. Work became impossible. I'd sit at my desk, staring at the same email for hours, the words blurring into meaningless lines. My appetite vanished. Meals sat untouched, my stomach churning at the thought of swallowing anything. Nights were worse. I would lie in bed next to her, listening to her steady breathing, wondering if she dreamed of him while I drowned in silence. Sleep never came easy. When it did, I woke in a sweat, heart racing, haunted by fragments of conversations I couldn't erase. The decision to get the DNA test had been both my salvation and my curse. It was the only way to know, the only way to silence the war in my head. But the waiting felt like torture designed by some cruel god. Every day that passed stretched me thinner, pulling me closer to breaking. Then it arrived. A plain envelope slipped into the mailbox like it carried nothing more important than junk mail. My hands trembled as I pulled it out, my vision tunneling, the world fading until there was only that thin white rectangle between my fingers. Inside, a few pages, words typed in sterile clinical language. But there it was, the line that ripped my chest wide open. Probability of paternity, 0%. For a moment, I couldn't move. My knees buckled and I stumbled into a chair, gripping the paper so hard it crumpled in my fists. My chest heaved like I was drowning, air scraping in and out of my lungs. My vision blurred, tears spilling before I even realized I was crying. It wasn't just grief. It was disbelief, rage, humiliation, all crashing over me in violent waves. I thought of every smile, every promise, every night I held her close, believing we were building a future together. And all of it, every piece of it, was a lie. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the walls down, to destroy everything in sight, just to match the wreckage inside me. But instead, I sat there, shaking, my knuckles white around the damning words that had just unraveled my life. That's when I heard her. The sound of the front door opening, her footsteps light against the floor. She called my name in that cheerful tone she used when she wanted something, and a moment later, she walked into the room, smiling, radiant, like she was living a perfect little dream. I shoved the paper into my lap, crushing it beneath my hand before she could see. My heart pounded so violently I thought she might hear it. She came over, kissed my cheek, and asked casually, "Everything okay?" I nodded. I lied. Because how do you tell the woman who destroyed your soul that you know the truth? Her smile lingered as she walked past me, humming softly, already planning a future built on deception. And in that moment, hiding the paper, I realized something that hurt worse than the result itself. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was unrepentant. She was carrying another man's child, looking me in the eyes, smiling as though I were nothing more than her safety net. The betrayal wasn't just in the act. It was in her ease, her calm, her comfort in my blindness. And as I sat there, fists clenched around the proof of her lies, a cold fire lit inside me. The grief didn't vanish, but it hardened. And what replaced it was sharper, stronger, and far more dangerous than heartbreak. He didn't break the next morning. He made coffee. He kissed her forehead like nothing had happened. He kissed her in a way that said, "I am still here. I still love you." And she smiled back, unsuspecting, safe in the quiet lie we'd both been living in different ways. That was the first rule. Do not give her a glimpse of the war going on in your head. Anger is hot and roaring. Strategy is cold and slow. I chose cold. For 2 weeks, I became two people. One was the tired, affectionate husband who asked about doctor appointments, rubbed her swollen feet, and practiced lullaby nonsense at night. The other was a man who lived in the margins of our life, collecting paper trails and tiny betrayals like a miser gathering coins. Every message she sent, every call she took, if it smelled like it belonged to someone else, it went into a private folder. Screenshots, timestamps, the threads where passion leaked into flirtation. I copied them all. I backed them up. I labeled them. I turned chaos into evidence. I started small and methodical. I created a separate email account just for storage, nothing linked to my daily life. I scanned receipts, dinner reservations for 2 at odd hours, coffee shop names that weren't part of our routine. I printed out screen grabs and slipped them into a folder along with the DNA report. The folder lived on my desk, unremarkable, under a stack of unpaid bills so it would blend into the background of our normal life. Anybody walking in would never guess it contained the thing that could blow our world apart. I called a lawyer the night I realized that this wasn't going to be a private fix. I needed someone who could translate pain into protection, heartbreak into legal teeth. The voice on the other end asked questions in a tone that made everything sound official and final. Dates, names, proof. She told me to keep my cool. She told me to document everything. She told me not to confront until we had a plan. It was the clearest direction I'd had in months. Don't make a scene, she said. Let her think she still has you. Make sure the evidence is airtight. We'll talk options, divorce, custody, financial protections. You need to be ready." Her words were the compass I'd been missing. So I followed them. I learned to smile after sleeping with rage. I learned to ask about doctor's appointments with an actor's patience. I sat through ultrasound visits and nodded, holding my wife's hand as though nothing had shifted. People around us called me supportive. They told me how lucky I was. I needed them to keep seeing the man I presented, the man who would be shattered if he knew anything. It made her careless. At home, I was careful with my face. Anger showed in the jaw, in the eyes. So I practiced neutral. Neutral became my weapon. When she bragged to friends about our little secret and rolled her eyes at my overprotectiveness, I let the comment slide. I wrote down the context later. When she left her messages open on the counter, I pretended not to notice while my brain rewound conversations, picking out phrases that mattered. "Wish you were here instead of him." Those words moved from being painful to being leverage. There were nights I wanted to storm the house and tear everything apart. There were nights I almost called her out in front of her friends, almost revealed the paper burning a hole in my desk drawer. Instead, I sat on my hands and wrote down each impulse in a notebook, a list, a timeline, a ledger of the way she had replaced our life with a secret. It felt clinical, almost detached, but that's what it needed to be. Precision beats fury every time. She thought I was too broken to fight back. She thought I would crumble, make a scene, beg for answers and forgiveness. She was wrong. While she slept in the complacency of my silence, I prepared the unraveling. I built a case, brick by careful brick, until the foundation of her life inside my house was ready to be exposed. And through it all, I kept smiling. The house was quiet that Saturday afternoon, but my chest rattled with a storm. Everything I had collected, the DNA test, the messages, the receipts, the folder that had become the record of my unraveling, sat neatly stacked on the table in front of me. Today wasn't going to be private. Today wasn't just between her and me. It was time to drag the truth into the light. Her family was over, gathered in the living room, sipping coffee and laughing about baby names. I invited them deliberately. Her parents, her sister, two close friends. She thought it was a casual get-together, just another chance for them to gush about the baby that wasn't mine. She walked around glowing, soaking in the admiration. I smiled, waiting for my moment. I stood up and cleared my throat. Everyone turned, expecting a toast. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. Cold, slow, exact. "I have something important to share," I began. "Something that changes everything." Her eyes flicked to me, a little nervous. But she smiled anyway. That smile, I had lived under it for months. I reached for the envelope. The room went silent when I slid the paper out and read, 0% probability of paternity. The words dropped like glass shattering on tile, gasps, a mug clattering onto the table. Her family's heads whipped toward her, faces tightening, waiting for her to explain. She froze, the color draining from her face. Her lips parted, but no sound came. For the first time, she couldn't control the room. Finally, she stammered, "Whoa, what are you talking about? That's not possible." Her hands trembled, clutching her belly like she could protect herself from the truth. Tears welled up, spilling fast, staining her perfect smile into a jagged, broken mask. I placed the folder down, flipping through page after page of screenshots, receipts, late-night messages. Each one louder than the last. "Not only is the baby not mine," I said, calm but merciless, "but you made sure to keep yourself entertained while I was at work providing for this house. You thought I'd never know. You thought I was too blind." She reached for the papers, desperate to stop me, but I pulled them back. "No, let them see." "Let everyone see what you've done." Her father's face hardened, jaw tight with disappointment. Her mother muttered something under her breath, shaking her head in disbelief. Her sister just stared, eyes wide, covering her mouth. The humiliation wrapped around her like chains, public, undeniable, permanent. I wasn't finished. I saved the sharpest blade for last, and the best part? I turned toward the back of the room where a friend of mine, our mutual friend, shifted uncomfortably. She wasn't alone in this. She had help. From someone sitting right here. All eyes darted toward him. His face went crimson, then pale, then crimson again. He sputtered, "That's not true!" "Don't listen to him, he's just angry." But the proof was in the folder. His name, his number, his words, "Wish you were here instead of him." The room erupted. Her family's anger turned in two directions now. Toward her, toward him. She sobbed, hands covering her face, shame rolling off her in waves. He tried to deny it, but his stammering was its own confession. He looked trapped, exposed, and furious at being cornered. I let the silence hang, then delivered the final blow. "I've already spoken to my lawyer. Divorce papers are being filed. This house stays with me. My accounts are locked. You're cut off. You can keep your lies, your lover, and your shame. But you won't take another thing from me." She broke then. The tears turned into ugly sobs, shoulders shaking. "Please, please, we can fix this. I made a mistake." But there was no fixing what had been shattered. I looked around the room one last time. Every face carried a mix of anger, shock, pity. But for me, for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt steady, solid, in control. She had stolen my trust, tried to steal my future. But I took back my dignity in front of everyone who needed to see, and as she crumbled into her own mess of denial and shame, I stood taller than I ever had. When the dust finally settled, when the tears and shouting faded into silence, I found myself alone again. The house that had once felt heavy with suspicion suddenly felt lighter, empty but honest. No more secrets buzzing in the shadows. No more pretending everything was fine while my gut screamed otherwise. Just me, my thoughts, and the truth. And here's what I learned. Betrayal doesn't just hurt, it reshapes you. For a long time, I thought I was weak for doubting her. I told myself, if you really love someone, you don't question them. But the truth is the opposite. Love without trust is just denial dressed up as devotion. Every time she dismissed me, every time she looked at me like I was crazy for noticing the cracks, I was gaslighting myself, convincing myself to stay blind. But instincts don't lie. Your body knows before your mind can process it. That tightness in my chest, the unease in my stomach, it wasn't paranoia. It was my soul screaming that something wasn't right. I ignored it because I wanted the dream more than I wanted the truth. And that was my mistake. Betrayal almost destroyed me. It stripped me raw, made me question my worth, made me wonder if I was simply not enough. But here's the thing. Betrayal says nothing about your value. It only exposes theirs. Her lies, her deceit, her cowardice. That was all on her. None of it was proof that I was unlovable. It was proof that she was incapable of love. The DNA test, the evidence, the confrontation, it all gave me something I didn't expect. Freedom. Because the truth, no matter how devastating, is better than living a beautiful lie. The lie suffocates you slowly, makes you doubt yourself, keeps you chained to someone who doesn't deserve your loyalty. But the truth? The truth burns like fire, and then it clears the air. And standing there, with everyone watching her crumble, I realized something powerful. I wasn't broken. I was finally unchained. The lessons? Simple but carved deep. Trust your instincts. Don't ignore the little signs just because you're afraid of what they might mean. Don't let anyone convince you that your pain is imaginary. And most of all, don't let betrayal define you. You are not their lie. You are not their cowardice. You are not their failure. If anything, betrayal is a twisted kind of gift. It tears away the mask and shows you exactly who someone is. And when you see them clearly, when you finally accept the truth, you can walk away stronger than you ever thought possible. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it leaves scars. But scars aren't weaknesses. They're proof that you survived something meant to break you. Proof that you healed. So here I stand, not as the man she tried to fool, but as the man who reclaimed his life. I lost her, but I gained myself again. And honestly, sometimes losing someone who lies is the best win you'll ever get. Because at the end of it all, what matters most isn't who betrayed you. It's who you become after. And I became free. I became stronger. And I became someone who will never again mistake silence for peace or secrets for love. That's the closure. That's the justice. And that's the truth. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button right now. Because let's be honest, Betrayal stories like this, where karma actually comes full circle, they're not just stories. They're reminders. Reminders that no matter how much someone lies, cheats, or manipulates, the truth always finds a way out. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Have you ever seen karma hit this hard? Maybe you've lived through something similar. Or maybe you've watched someone who thought they could get away with everything finally get what they deserved. Share it, because trust me, your story might be the one that gives someone else the strength to open their eyes. And hey, don't forget to subscribe. We've got so many more stories of betrayal, revenge, and raw, unfiltered justice coming your way, and you won't want to miss a single one. Every story here is about more than pain. It's about turning heartbreak into power, lies into lessons, and betrayal into a new beginning. So hit that bell, stay connected, and be part of this community where we don't just talk about the scars, we talk about how to rise from them. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't just proving them wrong, it's living better without them. Until next time, stay sharp, trust your gut, and remember, justice always has a way of catching up.